What's up everyone, we're back at it again. My name is Brad and welcome back to my channel. Does your jade plant have white spots on its leaves? Maybe a little yellow brown discoloration? If you were to press the leaf, is it a bit squishy? Well, these are some common things that might be impacting your jade plant, and in this video I'm going to talk about why they happen, but also I'm going to talk about how to fix it. Before I get into the content, if you're new here, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel. We're really close to hitting our goal of 820 subscribers, and I would love to have you along for the journey. Now, without further ado, let's get into the content. Let's talk about the first common issue that might be impacting your jade plant, and that's white spots or speckling. This issue is so common that I bet you've seen it either at a local nursery or a big box store in your area. The white speckling is really something that can easily be solved for, and luckily it has nothing to do with pests whatsoever. White speckling or spots is a sign that your jade plant has been watered with hard water. The spotting is really just mineral deposits that have found its way through the root system and up into the succulent leaves of the jade plant. To really remedy the white speckling that you see on your leaves, the only thing that you need to do is gently wipe it off with a damp cloth or even your fingertips, and that's all you need to do. If you want to prevent this from happening in the future, that is the white speckling or spots, what you should try to do is you should try to use distilled water or some type of water that had reverse osmosis done, or even rainwater. If you're fine with doing maintenance on your jade plant to keep it looking nice and tidy by wiping the leaves down with either a cloth or your fingertip, by all means continue to use your tap water, but also know that you can solve for this problem by again using either a distilled water or using some water that has gone through a process of removing those excess minerals that are in it. While white spots and speckling is fairly common and truly is nothing more than mineral deposits that have found its way from the water onto the leaves of your jade plant, you could on the other hand also have a pest problem. You'll know the difference by if the white spots instead appear as blobs instead of speckling, and if those blobs are cotton-like in nature. Those blobs more than likely are mealybugs, but fortunately this is a pest problem that you can also easily solve for. Simply take rubbing alcohol, dip a cotton swab or a cotton ball with that rubbing alcohol, rub the leaves and the branches or any of the infected areas, and your mealybug problem is solved for. Does your jade plant have wrinkled or misshapen leaves? Well, I bet you it has to do with how you're watering your jade plant. While a jade plant is a succulent, and by that it stores a lot of the water into its plump leaves, if you do not water it properly, your leaves will become misshapen or deformed. If your leaves are wrinkly, that is a telltale sign that your jade plant isn't getting enough water. The leaves, like I said, are storing a lot of water in them, and if you don't water your plant appropriately, what happens is the water that is stored in the leaves will begin to draw out to feed your plant or to really give your plant a nice drink. And when that happens, the leaves become wrinkled and deformed. The easiest solution to make sure that these leaves become plump or that remain plump and don't have any kind of deformity is to make sure that you give it a regular drink. My jade plant I water about once every 2 weeks. A lot of people, on the other hand, thinking that because the jade plant is a succulent, it doesn't need to be watered, might go months without watering their plant, and that in turn leads to a plant that has these wrinkled leaves, these deformed leaves, these misshapen leaves, and just a jade plant that isn't aesthetically pleasing. If you are unsure of whether or not your jade plant needs drink, well, just simply stick your finger in the soil and see how wet or dry it is. If it's bone dry, your plant absolutely needs some water. If, on the other hand, the first few inches of the soil are dry, you're good to go. You can also check periodically to figure out whether or not your jade plant is depleting water from the leaves by just simply giving the leaves a nice little squish. Are they plump and firm? If they are, then that's how you know your jade plant is perfectly great with the amount of water that it's receiving. If, on the other hand, it's wrinkly and not really plump, and also kind of a more firm isn't the right word, but it doesn't depress down when you squeeze it, and instead is more like a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard, then you might want to give your jade plant a drink of water. If you like videos like this and want to continue to see more videos about houseplant tips or tricks, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's totally free and would mean a lot. Thank you so much. Now let's get back to talking about some of the common things that are impacting your jade plant. Jade plants look best when they're nice, bushy, and compact. Sometimes you might see jade plants that are very reached out, stretched out, and the distance between their leaves is very long. This is a common issue that occurs, and this issue is so common that the scientific name for it is called etoylation. This occurs when your jade plant isn't receiving enough sunlight. What your plant is really doing is it's reaching and stretching and doing its best to find any kind of source of sunlight that it can. To reverse this, well, not really reverse, because unfortunately once the internodal length is there, it's set. But to prevent this from happening going forward, so on any of your new growth, you want to make sure that you give your jade plant as much light as possible. These plants love bright sunlight. I keep this particular jade plant outside during the summer and springtime where it can receive bright direct sunlight, and in the winter and fall I bring it inside where it can still receive some bright indirect sunlight. If you find yourself having a jade plant that isn't able to get that necessary bright indirect sunlight by either placing it outside or inside next to a window that has that kind of light, what you can instead do is you can supplement the light using a grow light. Grow lights are a great way to give your plants that otherwise wouldn't have or wouldn't be able to get the light that it can need inside. So when you have your grow light, you want to make sure that you keep your grow light as close as possible to your jade plant so it can give your jade plant the energy that it needs in order to have that big, bushy, compact appearance that makes the jade plant look absolutely beautiful. Another common issue that impacts jade plants is small leaf size. Small leaf size can be caused by a number of issues, and it's best to use the process of elimination to figure out what is causing your small leaf problem. Is your jade plant getting enough sunlight? If your jade plant isn't getting enough sunlight, then chances are not only do you have that stretching that I mentioned earlier, but you also have smaller leaves. Be sure to give your plant enough sunlight or a grow light in order to supplement any kind of sunlight that it can't get to make sure that those leaves become nice, beautiful, and kind of oblong, but I love the look. Secondly, the issue can be caused by lack of water or actually overwatering as well. Depending on if your plant is over or underwatered, regardless, it can lead to plants that have a smaller leaf size. Either your plant isn't getting enough water, and because of that, it is trying to conserve energy because water is one of the three primary building blocks that a plant needs. And during that conservation of energy, it basically keeps the leaves super small because bigger leaves require more energy to produce. Or it can be caused by overwatering, where again, your plant is uptaking so much water that in order to balance out the amount of water that it's uptaking, the small leaves are occurring. Finally, small leaves can be caused by a lack of nutrients. Plants, just like humans, need to eat in order to help them grow. If you notice that your small leaves aren't caused by any kind of lighting issues, nor are they caused by anything related to water, then chances are you need to supplement your water with some kind of fertilizer for your jade plant to help it give it an extra boost of energy. As you can tell, leaf appearance is very important when it comes to the jade plant because the leaves really do make the jade plant beautiful and stunning. Sometimes you'll notice that your jade plant will have red or purplish tips on the leaves, and while this might seem troubling, this is actually a very desirable look that some people try to achieve, and it's called blushing. The blushing is really your plant or your jade plant undergoing heat stress. It's totally fine, and it's just a protective mechanism that your jade plant does in order to prevent the plant from dying out. Now, if that blushing or the red tips of your jade plant is accompanied by shriveling, then chances are not only is your plant undergoing heat stress, which again is what's causing the blushing, but your plant is also being underwatered. Either move your plant to a spot that gets a little bit less sun if you tend to be on the underwatering side, or water your jade plant more frequently in order to prevent that shriveling from happening. Whichever you choose, there's no right or wrong answer. I personally love to see when my jade plant blushes due to that heat stress, but if you on the other hand want to keep those green leaves, try not to give it as much direct sunlight. Pull it back, give it bright indirect sunlight, and also make sure that the temperatures are moderate meaning, not too hot. You don't want to go crazy and do 100+ degrees, but you also don't want to do so cold that it just makes your plant go into some kind of dormancy. Balance that out either get your green leaves or place it outside in that bright direct sunlight to allow it to blush, and your jade plant will be good to go. When it comes to your jade plant, you might also find that it has yellowing leaves. Yellowing leaves that are accompanied by mushiness are usually a sign that your plant is being overwatered. If your jade plant is being overwatered, what is happening is your root system is uptaking the water, and the water is going into your leaves. Your leaves can't really store all of the water that you're giving it, so the cell walls of the leaves basically burst. When those cell walls burst, what is happening is the structure of that cell wall or the structure of that leaf is actually deteriorating, and therefore it's becoming mushy and no longer rigid. If, on the other hand, while rarer, your jade plant just has yellowing leaves, that is a sign of some kind of nutrient issue. Nutrient issues can happen when, for instance, your plant is either giving too much or giving too little fertilizer. In the case of a jade plant, more times than not, this is due to being over-fertilized. If you are over-fertilizing your plant, be sure that you are reading the directions on the fertilizer, and also make sure that the fertilizer is for some type of succulent plant. If there's too much nitrogen, for instance, this can cause issues which will lead to the yellowing leaves. Going back to overwatering, if you tend to overwater your plant, or if you even tend to underwater your plant, make sure that you're checking periodically to make sure that your jade plant is really happy in the pot that it is in. Jade plants have a very small root system, so chances are you don't really need to worry about either upsizing or downsizing the pot, but still it's really nice to periodically check the root ball of your plant to make sure that it is in a really great environment, or in a great position to really become the best that it can be. You might also notice that the leaves of your jade plant are starting to drop. Dropping of the leaves, if it is not accompanied by any kind of yellowing, for instance, is usually a sign that your jade plant is not in an environment that is conducive to the environment that it is accustomed to being in. You have to remember, jade plants, wild succulents, are oftentimes found in tropic or really arid environments. For instance, when I went to Greece, there were jade plants everywhere, and this was out direct sunlight, and these jade plants just were pretty much in a warm environment all year round. If your jade plant is in an environment where it might get kinds of cold drafts, that oftentimes will lead to leaf drop. If you find that your jade plant is being exposed to any kind of cold draft, for instance, in the summertime, if it's indoors and it's by an air vent, and that air vent is hitting the jade plant, and this is accompanied by leaf drop, well, try moving your jade plant to another spot. Make sure that you're keeping up with the watering, and before you know it, you should have leaves or even branching appear from the bare areas of the jade plant. This is a really simple solution, and it is not uncommon that people have leaf drop, but they might think that it is something that it is not. If you can find what the root cause of the leaf drop, which again is typically due to it being in an environment that it is too cold for your jade plant to be in, if you can correct that, then the leaf drop should stop. And then there's the holy grail of a jade plant, and that is having a thick trunk. The two primary ingredients that you need to have a thick trunk on your jade plant is to make sure that it's getting enough light, as well as that your watering is appropriate for the plant. I also have another video that I'll make when I talk about the secrets into getting a thick trunk for the jade plant, and make sure you check that out if you want to know all the tips and tricks related to making sure that your jade plant has that nice idyllic structure and look. Those are the things that I've learned to make sure that my jade plant not only survives, but it also thrives. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that you found it helpful. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Again, my name is Brad. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.